This video is going to cover the creation of the weekly bulletin. You can create it several days ahead of time and schedule it to send whenever you like, or you can create it the morning of the meeting. In this video, we are going to discuss updating speakers and events, creating or updating stories, logging into DACdb, speaker spreadsheet, and jot form, using the advanced build feature, and actually sending the bulletin within the DACdb system. Now, before we begin, everything will go much more smoothly if you have already checked the speaker spreadsheet and the jot form and made sure that all of your existing events and stories are up to date. Let's take a look at what the bulletin email actually looks like. I'm going to bring in a previous bulletin just to show you all the features in the bulletin so you understand what's going on and what we're creating. So this area right here is the banner. It includes the club's logo image, the Zoom link as a hyperlink, as well as the meeting information for those that prefer to put in a meeting ID and passcode, and links to our general social media. Next, we have this week's speaker information. Then we have several additional stories and items that we are running in this particular bulletin. Collecting money or fundraising drives to help Ukrainian refugees, our own foundation donation button, reminding people that they can watch us on YouTube, and then sharing out the publicity form to everyone so they can fill that out if they have an event coming up or if they want to report a successful one. Now, along the banner, or along the border here on the side, we have this events link. And anything that we have scheduled in the calendar, whether it's a club social or an upcoming speaker, will show up here in this events panel. Now, it will not update if you update events after you create the bulletin. So it's very important that you make sure that you have all of the upcoming speakers already created in DACdb's calendar, as well as any club socials, fundraisers, or service events. Otherwise, they won't show up in the bulletin on this borders area. Underneath the events, we have birthdays. We're going to tell it what time frame to include for birthdays and wedding anniversaries if there are any. So let's get started actually putting this together. So I've already created a story for our upcoming speaker for this week. You're seeing the story here for Heather Hooper on my DACdb login page, my dashboard home. And so I will just use this story in the bulletin. If you've gotten behind and haven't created a story for this week's speaker, you do have another option for creating it actually as you're creating the bulletin. So let's get started. I'm going to go to my club, Easy Bulletins, and then New Bulletin. Now I'm going to choose this one right here. It really doesn't matter. This label up here is what's going to show up when you're naming it, but it doesn't matter which one of these you choose because we're going to start with advanced build. So here we've got all of the stories that are available to us to add to our bulletin. You can see the ones at the top here. These are the ones that we've created within our club. The ones down here are the ones that have been created by the district, and we can use those and pull them in if we want to. I typically use them if we've got a slow week or if there's something important going on like the Ukrainian crisis. So I'm going to start pulling over things I know I want in my bulletin. There's our speaker story, the donation button, the YouTube channel, the news to share, the banner that will go at the top. I don't have any additional club news to put in, and this option right here is a placeholder for you. So if you don't already have a story created for this week's speaker, you can pull this one over as well and edit it on the actual building side. Finally, I'm going to scroll down and find the Rotary response to the Ukrainian crisis. Now that I have everything over here, I need to make sure that everything is showing up in the order that I want it to be. So I know I want the banner at the top, so I'm going to click the banner and bump it up to the top. Then I usually have the speaker under the banner. And then, let me see, And it's up to you how you want to order things. Sometimes there's a very logical pattern for you to order these things in. Sometimes not. It's just up to you as to how you want to order things. The Ukrainian crisis is still a pretty hot topic right now, and there's a lot of people in need. And it doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. So I'm going to bump it on up above all of these other things. Now I need to scroll down. And here is where we are controlling what is showing up in the sidebar. Notice it's got a start date and an end date. This is going all the way out to April 26th. And I think that is fine for events. But I am going to make a change. For the birthdays and the anniversaries, I only want the ones coming up in the next week. And so I'm going to change this date to the 3rd, and this one as well. And it does have to be formatted this way, 03. It won't accept just a number 3. It wants 2 digits there. All right, and that is all that we change. I'm going to scroll up and tell it, build it. All right, so now you can see we have our banner here at the top. We have our sidebar with all of our speakers and events that are coming up, including our big fundraiser. The birthdays are listed here and anniversaries. Here is the story for Heather. Then there's the day of service story that we created, and the Rotary relief efforts that came from the district, and the other stories that we discussed. So even though these things are already created, we can still make some edits here. Rotary Day of Service, it looks like there's a typo here. I'm going to go ahead and fix it here in this bulletin, and then go and make sure that it's fixed everywhere else as well. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to change this font size up to 12 to make it a little easier to read. Service. Let me move that, make sure that's all 12 as well. All right, the other things we can just leave. Everything looks fine. I've got my byline in here as the one that actually wrote the story, all of her information. And so now I'm going to save it. Okay, we saved it, and now we've got to give it a name. I usually take out this number because this bulletin name shows up in the subject line of the email that we're going to send. So I'm going to change this up. Bulletin, and the bulletin is actually for tomorrow, so I'm going to change that and click submit. And so now this is the bulletin we've just created, and you'll notice that it's over here in the drafts. So I'm just going to click to open this up again, give it one more good look. Looks like that correction I made has been repaired, and everything looks good. So I'm going to publish it. Once it is published, we'll go back to bulletins. And now we can see there's tomorrow's bulletin. I'm going to click the P-mail. And I usually don't make any changes here. If anyone decides that we do or don't want to send it to different things, I just accept whatever is selected here and go to Send PM Mail. Now here I do make some changes. You'll notice that it does have my personal email address here. I do want that to change to the Raleigh Rotary PR. That's what I want to show up as this email coming from. And I also want to change the reply to email address. So if someone replies to this, I don't want it to go to my personal email. I want it to go to the Raleigh Rotary PR Gmail account. Okay. And here again, if somehow you missed something, you can change the subject line here. You do have the option of attaching a file to this if you need to, but I generally do not. This is just the bulletin. Scrolling down one more time to make sure that all of our line breaks and everything have worked the way they're supposed to. Everything looks good. So scrolling back up toward the top. Now here's where I can choose to schedule the delivery, or I can send it right now. So if I were creating this Monday morning, I would go ahead and send it right now. But since I'm creating this a day ahead of time, I can schedule the delivery. So I'm going to schedule it. Scheduled for tomorrow morning. And I usually schedule these to go out at 5 a.m. just so that it's there in people's email inboxes right when they get up. And then save. And then I can go ahead and click. When you see this little icon added to the send button, that means that it is a scheduled send. So even though I'm going to hit this send right now, it's not going to send it right now. It will just put it into the box ready to go. One thing to keep in mind, once you have created the bulletin and I've scheduled it to send, even though I can go back and edit stories, like this district-wide day of service that I'm going to correct right now as I'm talking. Even though I'm changing this here and saving it, it will not affect the bulletin once it's created. The same thing goes for any speaker updates that go in the sidebar or events that go in the sidebar. Once that bulletin is created, even if it hasn't sent yet, you can't make changes to it on the back end. If there are any important changes, you would have to go in and cancel that send and recreate the bulletin or the story that you need to create. Remember when I said if you got behind and you don't already have a story created for this week's speaker, you can just create it in the build area? That's where we are right now. So here is the placeholder story that I have for just this week's speaker. So you can just go to, if you got a last minute speaker form, you can just go to the speaker form and put in the speaker name, spell her name right, and update all of the information that's here below. There's a picture already existing. I'm going to right click the picture, tell it image properties, browse the server, and it's just like creating a story of your own. Go down and find Heather's picture. And notice here that little padlock is open, so I want to click to close that before I start changing the size. All of the other items are already set because they were set with the original image, and okay. And so that's how to handle it if you don't already have a story created to add to the bulletin. You can just add the item this week's speaker and update that information right here. So again, a reminder, when you're creating the bulletin, make sure that you have all of your speakers and events updated in DACdb first. Make sure that you have created or updated any stories that you're going to need to add to the bulletin before you get started in the bulletin. Then you're going to need DACdb, the speaker spreadsheet, just to verify that you've got the right speaker. Sometimes there are last minute changes. The jot form to get the speaker information out of if you don't already have a story. Then use the advanced build to put all of the things together, and then send the bulletin. Now you have everything you need to know to create and send a bulletin.